And boom, according to that, I am live. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight. My name is Hiko Simon. That is the microphone. This is the camera. It's great to see you. Yeah, great to see so many people rocking in. How is your week going? It's been a record. I mean, every year is a new record, but including in Japan. Tokyo, we've had a record number of days above 35 degrees Celsius, which, as I say it out loud, I realize I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. It's probably like 120 or something. I think it's probably not quite 100, but it's too freaking high. And actually, I was looking at the news today, and until literally 3 or 4 years ago, there was always this thing. I think I must have even talked about it on the show. How Japan, because it's surrounded by water, there's this sort of barrier where the temperature, with all the humidity and everything, it kind of maxes out, and it's you don't get like desert heat where it can get to like 50 degrees. It always maxes out at just below 40 degrees. And Japan had never had a 40-degree day. It had 39.9. And it was like there was this magical 40-degree barrier that all of a sudden got broken a couple of years ago. And you started to get some places in Japan 40.1 degrees and 40.2 degrees. Today in Nagoya, where Give Me a Break Man is, it was 42.5 degrees in a huge freaking city. And Tokyo has been like routinely 37, 38 degrees. Apparently, I think it got up to, in fact, the streak might still be going today. I saw in the news when it got to 11 days in a row, that was the most days in a row where Tokyo's had more than 35 degrees. And today was 37, 38 degrees in Tokyo. It was actually murderously hot. I had to go out in the morning, and it was crazy. Even just going short distances, walking in the shade, it was like too much. I could sort of had to run into air conditioning and stuff like that. So although today is the last day of summer, tomorrow is fall, which is named because the camera falls. Well, you could just see me frozen. I had the YouTube window open to check everything was working there. Damn, okay. This is innovating technical issues. Always new types of technical issues on this show. So yes, I hope you notice that I'm working hard to provide all different kinds of new technical issues every night. In fact, let me also plug in the power so I don't run out of power, because that could happen. So yeah, anyway, it's been great. It's been crazy, and officially it all ends tomorrow. And I think tomorrow is the day that officially all the jellyfish come out if you're into swimming in Japan. But it's still right now we're having like record high temperatures. So yes, while September is the start of it getting better, we get typhoons. And all of that kind of stuff through September and October. So it's really not until late September or October that it starts to get good. I'm, of course, going to America the week of the 15th. Probably that's going to interfere a little bit with the broadcast schedule. I'll just be there for a week. But yeah, probably after that, it'll start getting to you should come to Japan again. But right now it is still very much in you should not come to Japan mode. Anyway, we have tons and tons and tons of people in here. So let's go say hello to everybody. Hope you're all doing great. Starting with DJ Sunny Side Up. The Crown returns. If you missed, I'm sure everybody was waiting with bated breath to find out who won the MASH battle this week. I reclaimed it, but DJ Sunny Side Up had an awesome mix, actually, and I really love the fact that now we're getting to a point where, yeah, the mixes are both like always now kind of on point in terms, so it's really just down to taste and stuff like that. And hearing an opportunity to do a gangster rap version of 1,000 Miles, it just I couldn't let go of the opportunity. So yes, I claimed it this week. I will be deciding the MASH track for next week, probably in the next day or two. Often, I won't guarantee that I'll pick it from the after party, but the after party is your opportunity to make suggestions of what I could use for the next MASH battle. And I like to make sure we're going in different directions and trying different things. So think about it. For me, of course, after party has to be danceable, and I'm not going to do it. I'd MASH if it's not danceable. But yeah, remember, if you hang around an hour from now, join the after party. Think about tracks that you might want to suggest. Both that will be awesome in the after party, and that DJ Sunnyside and I could battle on for next week. That's actually a fun part of the process, is picking the track and then finding out kind of unexpected ways that we can go with that. But DJ Sunnyside Up, you did an awesome job, actually. We both heard each other's tracks and we're like, there's no obvious winner this time. So yeah, that's how it should be every week. It's a lot of fun. So thank you everybody for supporting. Dan H checking in a bit early. Not able to throw as many squirrels as usual. London a bit spotty because you're going around your current time eating strawberry sandor and cold brew. There we go. Off to go. You should definitely do that. Dan H, you did mention Denser is looking at withdrawing from their international business, so I dropped that into the topics. I don't know a lot about it. I had to read up on it after you pointed it out. I haven't seen it in the Japanese news, but it is kind of a big deal. So good job catching that and pointing it out. So I will definitely talk about that in a moment. Also, the meeting with Modi. Yeah, the summaries I've seen haven't mentioned a plan to take 500,000 Indians in 5 years. I can't really think that would be correct. I don't know. One, I don't understand how Modi could agree on Bengali. Well, you know what? You said Bengali, which I interpret as people from Bangladesh. I mean, from Bengal anyway. But are they different to Indian, and that they would accept 100,000 Bangladeshis? Like, would Modi agree to that, and 500,000 Indians? Japan only has 300,000 foreign residents right now, which is a dramatic. Oh, wait a minute. No, it has 3 million. Sorry, that's right. It used to be 300,000. That's kind of dramatic. And I did look it up, and I saw that Japan is going to have exchanges, which it wants to have. Like, and when you talk about exchanges, that's like school exchanges and visits and tours and cultural events. And they want to have 50,000 of those people involve people coming from India to Japan, i.e. they're talking more about having 450,000 Japanese go to India, which is interesting because there are not many flights from Japan to India, actually. There are a lot of Indian workers in Japan, particularly in IT. Particularly Japan kind of gets, for system engineering type jobs, they've traditionally been quite good at getting, the smart engineers from India to come to Japan. There are whole communities in Tokyo. Minami Tsunamachi, which is close to where I used to live in Nishikasai, is a famous neighborhood full of Indian IT engineers. Great food over there, and and even now they have schools there. Which, because of the math syllabus, if you think Japan has a more advanced math syllabus than the country than the UK or New Zealand or America, we're pretty much kids in Japan are doing algebra when I think we're still like counting sticks pretty much. But Japanese look at Indian math the same way. Indians do not just conventional like forms of arithmetic. Indians use different systems where you can take like two 8-digit numbers and multiply them based on logarithmic patterns that they memorize and stuff. So a lot of Japanese who are want their kids to be like super mathematicians send them to the Indian schools. So there is a bit of that going on, but I don't see 500,000 coming in 5 years. I didn't see the announcement of that, so it's worth looking up. But yeah. Anyway, from Dan's understanding, it would be a mix of temporary workers, students, and other short-term stays. Certainly, the numbers that I saw don't quite match up with that, but more exchanges is great because there really isn't enough exchange. And there is a thing where, there are ties where, again, Indian nationalists did look to Japan in some ways. Japan, parts of India were very conflicted during World War II. Fighting against an Asian power, for that hadn't been colonized, as a colonial possession of Britain, and this idea, and it was something that Japan exploited. Brits would say Japan cynically exploited, Indian nationalism to have them, fight against, the British or whatever when the Japanese were just trying to be colonials themselves. But I don't think you could ever say that there weren't some true believers in the Japanese cause, that they were actually decolonizing these countries. And there were some Indians who, did actually, use the opportunity of World War II to form partisan groups to oppose, British colonialism. And some of those people sort of, had power afterwards. And this was sort of reflected in the World War II post-war trials, where, of course, during the trials, which were supposed to be pretty much a kangaroo court for hanging, Japanese war criminals, Justice Pell, on the trial of Hideki Tojo as responsible for World War II, of course, there was the Indian justice who probably, the United Nations at that time pretty much just being, the allies and primarily sort of white nations, frankly, and colonial nations. They invited an Indian judge who came on and used the opportunity to point out that, this whole thing is sort of victor's justice, which was both kind of, it offered a different perspective to the colonial countries that were fighting against Japan. Although at the same time, of course, some people see that as being sort of apologist for the Japanese side. Of course, Justice Powell, a controversial figure who, Yasukuni Shrine, there's a whole statue, and his not rebuttal, his, oh God, I should know, and a judgment, his dissension to the War Crime Tribunal decisions is actually sort of enshrined in Yasukuni Shrine and whatever. So, there's a history of Indian nationalists, including Powell, looking to Japan as kind of like an example of an Asian country trying to do their own thing. So in spite of that, so at a high level and historic level, there are ties and respect between Japanese nationalists and Indian nationalists, and Modi is definitely an Indian nationalist. But that said, there's such a distance and there has not really been a lot of exchange. So perhaps the natural and logical exchange between Japan and India hasn't really manifested. Japan, of course, was a crazy ally of Britain, don't forget, right up until World War II. And even after World War II, even after Japan invaded China, still Japan's leadership and aristocracy wanted to stay a British ally. So, complicated history, I suppose. But wonderful, honestly, if we have more exchange with India. But I'm not sure about these figures. Anyway, interesting topic. That was a squirrel. You gave me a squirrel, Dan. What are you doing? It's 10:42. I'm already chasing your squirrels, and I'm not even sure that you made it. I think you're having a strawberry sando at the moment. So, Dan H, making me chase squirrels while he eats a strawberry sandwich with bad connection. Respect. Quinn Ranked asking, isn't there a sort of backlash against immigration and even tourism in Japan right now? I'll talk about this on the topic soon. Mildly, certainly there is a case of unmanaged over-tourism, and that's being equated with unmanaged immigration. And I think what's really happening with that, my opinion that I see being sort of validated elsewhere, is essentially people who have always just been uncomfortable with foreigners are getting a little bit more of a hearing. Doesn't necessarily have any more of a rational basis than it did from complaining, 4channel or Nichan message board people a few years ago. But, now with Sanseito picking up, which is really Sanseito's success, I would say, is as much to do with the LDP just sucking and just not inspiring anyone to vote for it, and there not being anyone to vote for, and people just wanting someone new who's got an answer, what sounds like good old-fashioned common sense answers that isn't one of the other 10 parties that has just failed and disappointed them in the past, including the LDP. And that's as much why they're getting votes as that there are actual immigration problems. However, as we'll get into in the stories in a bit, the fact that the government is kind of saying, oh, we should be seen to be taking action on this because, this is a serious issue is kind of disappointing anyway. So I suppose there's a sort of a backlash. There's a backlash sort of everywhere. I saw today that there were huge protests, anti-immigration marches, 15,000 people marching in Australia against immigration, which I was sort of thinking, oh, so what? Are they all planning to go? Are they all planning to leave? I mean, Australia's a country of immigrants. What are you protesting immigrants? Sure, give it back to the Aboriginals, or purchase the entire country on fair contractual terms. That would be a great idea. The irony of immigrants, protesting against immigrants, it's not that they're anti-immigration. They're just immigration of anyone that they don't like or looks like them. So there's, all around the world, there are these sort of backlashes, and it's, happening in Europe and so on. I think what's happening in Japan is milder, but it is having an effect. And certainly I'm not afraid or concerned for my own position, particularly as a permanent resident. But certainly it looks like it's going to have an impact on policy. Again, I've got articles to talk about this, so we'll get into this later on. We've got Sadiq, man from Florida. Good to have you in here. This is me speaking. Any life source out there received your mess? I've received your message. Sadiq. Lara says hi to Sadiq, and I say hi to Lara. Good to have you in the chat, as always. Not sure about what kind. Indeed. Sonny's here. New theory about the MASH battles that Sonny's here is weighing him down, wearing the crown. Hence, well, I mean, look, I did ask him very nicely just to let me have the crown this week. My theory is that. But we'll see what we can do. Eric, thank heavens. I've been here filibustering this entire time waiting for you to arrive. But now that you've made, although I must admit, I'm still a little bit afraid. I'm hoping I need my fear to be also settled down. We need your permission to start, but I also need my fear to be alleviated by Shubhas showing up. So hopefully that will happen down the chat. Everybody saying hello to each other. We've got updating software, which I did. That actually unusually went well, although then the camera stand fell over. See, it always comes from where you don't expect it. Aaron, our moderator, great to have you in here. Good morning, Aaron. Everybody, that's right. Everybody do what your moderator says. Give the video a like because I do not monetize these videos. which means I just do it literally for the psychological validation I get from you liking these videos. So please remember to leave a like. One day maybe algorithm senpai will notice me and the channel will grow again. But I'm very glad to have the regular crowd. This is a bit of a cheers bar. I kind of like that. We've got Lysander45. Good evening. Right back at you, Lysander45. Good to have you here. We've got Believe in Yourself calling a roll call there. I think we've covered everybody so far. Who else has made it into here? We've got Murder Hot. It was Murder Bot, by the way. Awesome series. It was literally the word I had in my head. It was murderous. I was seriously only walking 20 minutes outside at like 10 o'clock in the morning. Maybe it was a bit later than that. Oh, it was about midday. It was about midday. There's another thing as well. I had a thought today, a random thought. This is very important. I need to share this with you. I have been critical. First, I was critical of Japan for not having daylight saving because, of course, at this time of year, and particularly when the days are longer, the sun comes up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, I used to, when I was young and I had a life, I used to go out night clubbing and I would come home, 5 o'clock in the morning and it's already like midday and hot and, you can't go to sleep because it's too bright. And the sun in the middle of summer, Japan has these long days, but people are asleep because the sun comes up 3:30 in the morning and it goes down at 7 o'clock at night. And if you just had daylight saving and you shifted it, the sun would come up at 5 and it would go until 8 or 9 p.m. like other countries with daylight saving, and people could, go home from work still in sunlight during the summer or whatever. And then I sort of went against daylight saving because when I started working at international companies and I got so irritated by my colleagues in America and Australia always shifting their calendars, shifting their time based on their daylight saving time, which are at different times of year because opposite hemispheres, and then sending me calendar invites based on their time shifting, not realizing that, assuming that the whole world moves with their daylight savings, and just realizing if everybody never had daylight saving, everybody would be able to just know what time it is everywhere else and not call up at the wrong time. However, I've also heard people say that Japan is just miscalibrated. It should actually just be 1 hour ahead anyway. But today I had the thought as I was like walking around in the morning, buying bread and stuff and feeling like I was going to pass out, that maybe it is actually good if the summers are only going to get worse than this, if we're going to get like this insane and increasing heat. Maybe I'm kind of glad that the day is half over before most people wake up, actually. Kind of doesn't make sense, but anyway, it is hard to deal with. That was a square there. Yeah. Atsui desu ne, tsumari. Anyway, we got perfect timing. I'm assuming you're talking about the camera falling over, right? As I said, no technical issues. There we go. Black Tango. Athens is cooled off a bit. Oh, got to head for an island again. Yeah, oh man, I gotta go to Greece. Honestly, I would go just for the lamb, but the islands as well, but certainly not at this time of year. I did catch the camera, by the way. I have the reflexes of a slightly geriatric, faster hamster. I have the reflexes of a geriatric hamster, and I don't know if that means fast or slow. You have to actually figure that out. It's a mystery. Who else have we got in here? We've got boom. We've got pufferfish are starting to appear in Greek waters. Well, Japan must be to blame. That kind of sucks, honestly. You get those in Australia, but they were considered junk fish when I was growing up. The idea that people eat them in Japan was kind of freaky. Shivers. Okay. First, I knew I wasn't allowed to start because Eric wasn't here, and now Shubhas is here. So yes. I no longer have any fear. I hope you're enjoying a lovely cup of coffee there in Panama. Good morning to you. We got our man in Finland, late, but moi right back at you. Yoni, good to have you in the chat as always. Who else we got? I think we're almost caught up. Boom. We've got, the first rule of law, don't lose. Second rule, everything kind of depends on the first one, which isn't to say, Japan kind of dumb, like attacking everybody, but at the same time, it's kind of easy to say, oh yes, you shouldn't have attacked. The British Empire, never attacked anybody, right? It's like, and excellent at giving apologies, of course, to all the colonies who it completely understands why they're upset. So all of that. Yes, indeed. We got Lotigua. This is a new handle name for me. Great to have a new handle name in here. LDP is losing popularity. The timing for Sunseito is perfect. I mean, honestly, LDP is always losing popularity, and there's always new parties coming up. The Ishinokai, the Osaka Ishinokai, rode on that. There's always a few, even the NHK party rode on that. And right now, yeah, there is a time right now where there is definitely an opportunity for a right-wing party to, I mean, the LDP is just, they're even disillusioning. I mean, they're not even really ideologically that right-wing. So yeah, there's an opening for Sunseito at the moment. And, there's also an opportunity for anybody who says, aren't you uncomfortable with all these increasing foreigners around? And it is definitely a highly visible change. So for people who are not comfortable about that, which votes say was about 15% of the population, yeah, it's a chance to actually consider. And remember, there is a criticism, which again I'll get into in the stories very, very soon, that Japan doesn't have an immigration policy. It kind of just randomly tweaks and adjusts. And there are some people, even people who are sort of against the whole anti-Gaijin backlash, most people are admitting, yeah, maybe it is time that Japan actually had a coherent immigration plan. And there is actually, I saw a number in an article this week that current projections are Japan will have 10% of its population. Right now it's 3% foreign residents. It will be 10% by 2070. And, going from 1% when I got here, less than 1% to 3% now, that's a 300% change. 10% is that's bringing it into line with a lot of other countries, which, Japan is always defined. The first thing Japanese would say when defining what Japan is they'd say Japan is a homogenous country where there are no minorities of any form whatsoever, which was always wrong. But, now you especially, I think when Japan becomes a country with, a high percentage, not just of immigrants, but the children of those immigrants and the people married to those immigrants and multi-generational immigrants who identify as Japanese, and all that becomes more complicated. Yeah, that's going to be something that Japan will have to sort out, and we'll have to reconcile, hopefully successfully. And it has tons of material to learn from. But yeah, there are now government committees considering this anyway. So yeah, but certainly in the short term, there is an opening for people who are uncomfortable with change to exploit that, and that's definitely what Sunseito is doing. And they've done kind of a smart job about it with social media and so on. But I don't see that they have any really good ideas. Dead Age, don't tell me what to do. Did I tell you what to do? I don't think I did, but I'll take your money. Thank you. Do not send me. I mean, I appreciate it, Dan, but of course, you don't have to tip me, anyone. But yes. Oh, the liking, is that it? We definitely need more likes. Anyway, no need to fear. That is right indeed. Anyone else here in the chat? We've got. I'm just going to skip ahead. We got KOTGC. Emos and boats and limos and jets. Careful, the foreigner who wants your cookie. Culture wars. Shake my head. All that stuff. Yes, indeed. Good to have you in the chat. Anyway. So let's get into the topics. There are some topics. Oh, I'll tell you something I did interestingly this week. Had a bit of a busy weekend running around seeing friends, and good times and fun being had in spite of the crazy heat. I have always gone through preparing the topics for this. Normally, I mean, of course, I used to tweet all the time, and it was actually kind of, I'd do it all the time, and then it'd take me hours to go through all my tweets and figure out the ones I wanted to talk about at the end of the week. Lately, I've kind of been busy with work and life and all sorts of stuff, so I tweet less, and I've gone off Twitter altogether. I'm on Blue Sky. So I go through my RSS feeds, and I've got to go through a whole week's worth of news, and it takes a couple of hours. It's a bit of a chore. However, I've been playing around as well with the agentic functionality. All of these AI services, Gemini from Google, which I've been playing, actually is kind of has blown my mind in several ways I could talk about, but I'll do that later. And I pay for ChatGPT, and I've noticed that now it can not only think about responses, it can not only have like mini apps, AI-based apps that it can run for you, but it can now go and like do homework and research assignments for you and come back with like reports and summaries. And so it occurred to me the other day, well, rather than going through and finding the articles that that I think are good for Tokyo Tonight, in my RSS reader and going through hundreds of articles, why don't I just give ChatGPT the homework where I say what I want to talk about on Tokyo Tonight, where I want to talk about what's the top stories in Japan, what are the moving and shaking stories, what are the fun and interesting stories, what are the stories that come up that are reflective of trends in society, what are stories that impact foreigners. And particularly from these sources that I can show on the website. And I gave it I really thought about like over those 2 hours, what goes into every decision I make about the stories that I choose to cover here. And I gave it to ChatGPT and I said, okay, every Sunday it's going to send me a list of stories and articles to that it recommends, fit my criteria to cover in the show this week. And I was going through it, and it was really good, and it saved me a ton of time because, again, I was running around today. So as a result, I was able to tweet out what I'm about to tweet out, and it's, I for one welcome our AI overlords, and this is definitely not a case. AI is not taking over the show yet, but it certainly is making it much easier for me to pick out, okay, the things that I look for, that I sift through, that takes hours. It's reducing that. It gives me more time to actually see the stories that I want to talk to you about and read and get smart on them, rather than trying to filter out all the crap that I don't want to talk about. So really interesting. Anyway, and I remain a fan of our future AI. Other stories real, no hallucinations. Well, again, I told it that I want hyperlinks. I want summaries and hyperlinks to every story that you find, so that I can go check it out and read the actual story myself, which is what I do. So I decide whether I want to look at it in more detail by reading the quick summary. But I said you have to provide hyperlinks and sources for everything, so no hallucinations. And also, AI lately is improving. A year ago, you asked it anything, and it was like 80% hallucinations. I'm using AI a lot for work at the moment. I could go into this in more depth than I'm planning to go into here, but even the regular services, all of them are remarkably less hallucinatory right now. So yes, just kind of curious. I see this. So Dan H says, Joshua, the Japanese-speaking Brit, born and raised in Japan, doesn't live too far from me. Oh, I think I might know the guy that you're talking about, like Japanese citizen guy, like beard. I think I know who you're talking about. Doesn't live too far from me. Maybe I'm wrong about this. Doesn't live too far from me in England, and I have seen him when he's in England around town, but never reached out to him. I think I know the guy that you're talking about. There's a British woman as well, super tall, who I have met, who also has a YouTube channel, but she's less famous than him. But these examples right now are rare, but they are going to become a lot more normal. So yeah, indeed, society is changing, and let's go talk about how that is going to happen and what is going on. So, stories. What stories do we have? So many stories, so little time. It's already 10:58. Damn. Okay, let's get into it. First one from Dan H. I went and looked it up. Dentsu is pulling out of the country of Gaikoku. First of all, I think I've talked about Dentsu before, but for those of you who don't know, Dentsu is Cobra essentially saying maybe I should make a TT special episode about AI and my use of it. Well, it's an evolving thing, but yeah, by the way, total squirrel. Okay, of course I can talk about AI, and I would love to do that. Maybe I will. I also have been writing out little notes. I'm going to do like 3-minute shorts about running, and I've been actually writing because I've realized how I tried recording a couple and I'd always talk for more than 3 minutes. So I've been writing out notes so I can break up and organize my thoughts and record those. But the running vids are coming. I'm actually every free moment I'm thinking about those. So there's more special content coming. Maybe AI as well. Maybe that'll be a cool one. But coming back to Dentsu. So for those of you who don't know what Dentsu is the advertising company in Japan. And you might say, Hiko, that is a weird thing to say. How can you say the advertising company in Japan? Every country, of course, has thriving competition among different advertising companies. We've all watched Mad Men or whatever. Imagine Mad Men was crossed with the old telephone company or the post office. And there was only one. It's not actually owned by the government, but Dentsu is effectively a crushing monopoly. By the way, that building, that isn't the Shiodome City Center. That is the Dentsu building, which is across the road from the Shiodome City Center where I used to work. I used to work looking at the big Dentsu headquarters building. Think about ads. Think about advertising. Think about marketing. All of these creative people, all of these TV ads, all of these movie things, all these billboards, all this sort of in Japan, the crazy ads that you see on TV. Fun fact, that is like, I don't know, I'm pulling this number out of my ass, but it's like more than 90% all from one company. And that company, whilst if you want to be creative in advertising, you almost have to work in this company or you can't get into advertising. It's basically, I know people whose parents work at Dentsu and so on, and the company is like 99% salespeople who basically extort and coerce companies into they basically have everybody in Japan, the entire all media and publishing in Japan is completely locked into using Dentsu. They are an effective monopoly, and and through that, on the one hand, when they've got complete freedom, part of the reason I think that Japan has such sort of crazy ads everywhere is because Dentsu has so much power. I mean, they have power over politics, they have power over TV programming content, and not only over the ad breaks and what the ads look like and how they're designed, but even like the product placement in the TV shows and the scripts of the TV shows. And so, for example, when Facebook never took off in Japan until just after the massive earthquake in 2011. And when that happened, of course, in Japan, Twitter was hugely popular. And I found myself, after the earthquake and the tsunami, Twitter was like the most useful source of information in Japan. And it was revolutionary for me. It changed the meaning of Twitter. I've gone off it lately, but that really shone through. Facebook decided that they had gotten no penetration in Japan and they wanted to get more Facebook penetration. So they basically decided, they went to Dentsu, the advertising company in Japan, and just said, however much money you want, you have it, make us popular. And all of a sudden, every TV show, and not only the commercial break, in fact, they didn't do billboards and they didn't do many even TV commercials. What they did was every random talk show and news show, even public broadcasters were talking about how useful Facebook was after the earthquake. Facebook was not useful after the earthquake. Facebook was, mums sharing conspiracy theories about radioactive, children running around glowing in the dark and stuff. It was anti-useful. It was where paranoid, scared people. I mean, Twitter was like that as well, but Twitter worked in a way where the algorithm was neutral and you could get good information. But Facebook Dentsu is incredibly powerful in Japan. However, outside of Japan, it is just another advertising company that doesn't have a complete monopoly and the ability to lock in and intimidate and screw people who would dare to use and to destroy companies that would dare to use any other startup alternative advertising company. And they actually have to compete based on normal business, which they're not used to doing. And they operate in a completely different way where they just sort of take for granted that they control everything in Japan. They have offices overseas. And when I was in Brisbane on my recent trip, I actually saw a big building in the middle of Brisbane with Dentsu written on it. And I was like, oh, wow, Dentsu has places overseas. And in fact, I used to work at a company called Tokyo Marine, which is the biggest non-life insurance company in Japan, basically property insurance. And it was biggest in terms of reinsurance, it works where, just the same as if a massive earthquake happens in Japan, all the Japanese insurance companies paid, but they're reinsured by American and European insurance companies. And, Tokyo Marine actually underwrites a lot of the European stuff. There's a massive disaster in Europe that, risks collapsing all the insurance companies there. Japanese companies reinsure it. But again, Tokyo Marine, I was like the only foreigner just about in the entire headquarters building. And, that sometimes they'd talk about, because they had this huge position, much like Dentsu, in terms of real estate in Japan. There is a little bit more competition in insurance than there is in advertising, but not much. Even then, everything is still very cartelish in Japan. But Dentsu is just a monolith. It's probably Dentsu, I would say, is the most powerful advertising company in the world. Not in the sense of, I'm sure there are bigger American and European advertising companies that have more global reach, but Dentsu's ability to wield power, like over business and over news and over society and over politics on the world's third biggest economy, there's nothing like it that exists. It's a monumental company, but like Tokyo Marine, it's so big and comfortable and powerful in Japan. It doesn't have a clue about how to operate overseas. As far as I could see, when I saw that there was a Dentsu office in Australia, I assumed, I don't know, occasionally they want to have like animated koalas or some crap in their Japanese ads, and maybe they need someone who's seen a koala before. I didn't really think, like, why would Dentsu be in Australia? And it's in that light that apparently Dentsu, wanting to be taken seriously as a proper global competitive advertising company, did acquire a large British advertising company to become the 5th biggest advertising company in the world, but only based on a single acquisition and being so enormous in Japan. Maybe there were other acquisitions as well, but apparently there are rumors going around in UK at the moment that Dentsu is quietly looking for someone who will take their overseas subsidiaries off their hands, because they've just decided that gaikoku is hard. They don't like all of this competing on merits bullshit, and they just want to go back to where it's comfortable and where they just make money by sneezing and not having to do very much, which is in Japan. So yeah, they might be selling up their overseas operations, which apparently are it would be several $1 billion. The acquisition that they did of Aegis Group, which I'm not familiar with, but apparently it's a big advertising group in the UK, for 400 billion yen, which I can't convert in my head at the moment if I'm doing the old exchange rate. even then I can't do it. I'm guessing it's probably about was that $4 billion or $400 million? Maybe a fair bit of cash, and they're expecting to get billions back from it. I guess what would they spend in Japan? Dentsu, of course, also made the headlines, by the way, a few years ago for working, famously, by the way, especially if you get into creative roles at Dentsu. If you ever want to do a creative job and be in advertising and that's your dream, Dentsu is the only place you can do it. And they abuse the hell out of you. They treat you like a sumo stable apprentice. They work you literally to death. And a lot of people go through Dentsu and they go out the other side and they end up working in publishing or other sort of industries or design or something like that. But Dentsu, while you can do, you can make TV commercials because everyone's lining up for it. And there was a case where they worked a first year corporate hire to death, and that made the news. I mean, even Dentsu couldn't stop that story. But still sort of just controversial that it just reflects that Japan has competition issues. Anyway, freaking laser beams says. Attached to the heads of sharks, I believe. I mean, that would certainly be an idea that Dentsu could definitely do. Dan, who remembers Kiki, who, yes, I introduced in a video. I don't know if she worked in Dentsu or not. Strikes me as kind of the type. It wouldn't surprise me. She's done all sorts of things, actually. She's, very talented person, but I don't know that specifically. Boom, we've got more comment. I'm going to move on because it is 11:07. What else have we got in here? Oh yeah, a new survey showing kind of what's been coming out all along, but certainly remember, Japan is the most advanced country in the world in terms of demographic shift. Originally, when I was learning Japanese in the 1980s, Japan was an anomaly in the world that has this weird declining birth rate in an upcoming elderly society. And, not like the rest of us where we're all having lots of kids, but Japan's going to have this problem. It turns out now the whole world has this problem, right? Where no one's having kids, and Japan is just ahead of the curve on all of this stuff. And by the way, I think I've talked, all the theories on why this would be. And my amateur theory on this, without any scientific basis, was that, Japan is just too fun to be sort of single. But it's kind of funny. I think I mentioned that on Diary of a CEO, there was a population sort of expert talking about her theory on this, that she correlates a lot, the collapse in marriage and birth rates and fertility in countries from societies that don't have things in common, like, for example, India and Saudi Arabia, and, both liberal and conservative and progressive and, advanced in places with higher and lower education and standards of living. All their birth rates collapsed when, smartphones with high-speed internet became available in most countries. And her theory is that, yes, people are just too happy being distracted by their phones, and this has affected fertility around the world, which seems kind of flippant, but, and she said it's only a correlation and it's just a theory of hers. But it does kind of jive with my theory that even before smartphones, even before Netflix on smartphones, Japan is just a crazy, fun, distracting place to be. And it was just all the kind of cool, fun, distracting stuff that's here is kind of what made the birth rate collapse in the first place here. But that is my amateur theory. However, whatever is happening, it is continuing and worsening, even in a very short period of time, in 2 years. People in their 20s in particular now want even less than before to have children, from nearly 50 down to less than 40% of people in their 20s have any plan to have children. And in terms of the reasons, particularly for the people in their 20s, it's generally that it's expensive. But again, this is competing for personal time and attention. Not confident that they'd be able to raise kids. Again, especially when you got a lot of single kids on their own or whatever. And, unmarried being the other one, having no partner. But do you think it's necessary to get married? This is going down. Actually, it's funny. It's going up for people in the 30s. I guess that's natural in the 30s. People are in Japan, of course, getting married later. So maybe people are getting a little bit of late alarm, and this is increasing. But generally, people don't see any point in getting married. And this is definitely a global trend, by the way, but it's catching up in Japan. And these stats is just a continuing. I mean, you'd say that these are the same as other countries, but the point is this has been happening for longer. This is in a much more advanced state in Japan, and the government here has been desperately trying to turn this around. And completely failing at it. And this sort of shows that for all the efforts to get people to want to have kids, whether it's Netflix, whether it's, anime pillows, whatever the reasons, nobody knows. But nothing, if anything, current trends are only accelerating. So, yes. And what that means in terms of being able to retire in the future economy is actually pretty bad. Another bit of bad news, I suppose. Trump. Well, you know, I try not to talk about Trump, of course, on the show. I've just realized I've had Dan H calling Cobras Tenshi cool for the last 5 minutes, which he is, but I'll take that off the screen. Oh, K stuff. Do I like the host of Diary of a CEO? For some reason, I can't watch it. That host just irks me. He seems like a knobhead. I agree. I can't. I tell you, I saw a couple of episodes that I really liked, but I sort of agree. I don't like the host. And then I saw a couple of episodes of Diary of a CEO where I thought this guy, yeah, this guy, where did they find this guy? Where they have some people who were just talking bullshit and the host was totally not having any type of a meaningful, it was just come here and just talk your bullshit and I won't challenge you, and people just talking and, oh, wow, that's the most interesting thing. It's like, no, this isn't the sort of, so I don't like it. And I've really gone off it lately. But I do sometimes see episodes that I find interesting. I do sometimes find some of the people that he has on to be interesting. But I now watch every episode skeptically because I've seen a few too many episodes that I just considered to be bullshit. And I found that the host made it worse. So K stuff, I agree with you. I'm not a fan of the host of it, actually. But there we go. Dan H, that me, would rather have fun than have kids. There we go. You Japanese, or you're just Japanese, and Japanese figured that out years ago. So there we go. By the way, curious what's been going on in the comments now a little bit. We've got Lotigua. You remember the death of that woman in Denver? That's right. The compensation was just 10,000 USD. Yeah, I remember it was all very, very badly handled, and the companies that have tried to, cover it up and all sorts of stuff. It was. DJ Sunnyside Up pointing out, give me some validation. By the way, do you like my new t-shirt? I just got this a couple of days ago. I just washed it. So this is my first time wearing it. I've been, again, watching a lot of running video channels, which is kind of going to feed into some of what I'm going to share in terms of what I find useful from those. But one of them is this guy, Ben Parks, and he has his own running kit brand. And I like the other shirts I got so much, I got more. I don't know. I like this design. I don't know. It kind of makes me feel like I look like a weird kind of Olympic badminton player. These are squirrels. I'm going to get back on subject. If you're into buying anime stuff, like a lot of these services, a lot of people who come to Japan get these great gigs. I'm thinking about people like Softy Papa, who had to close down his business because of the, shifting grounds on Trump tariffs, and specifically the exception that America has had apparently for like more than a century or nearly a century. I don't know exactly what year, but apparently it's been 100 years. On small parcels that basically, I kind of understand what I assume the general logic is that apparently if you are shipping anything worth more than $800, then you have to pay normal sort of import duties and so on. But anything smaller than that, which could be personal sort of stuff, I think there was always a default presumption that small parcels and so on were either non-commercial or such small-scale commercial that America was happy to just allow people to use the parcel service and not have to pay duties on it and to accept that. However, Trump sort of pointing out, and not just Trump, by the way. I mean, there's a legitimate observation here that a lot of businesses, and particularly very large scale businesses, and thinking about companies like Shine and Shein. I was looking at, I say Shine, but I've heard people pronounce it other ways. But Temu and so on, places in China, have taken advantage of this, where by shipping stuff, we're buying directly from a company in China or any other country, and importing everything one parcel at a time. They get to do a huge volume of commercial transactions, avoiding the aggregated tariffs and duties that they'd have to pay on those prices, which allows them to make those very cheap, which in turn makes it very difficult for local American businesses to compete. And so I think again, any country can make a decision to decide that they are going to reasonably try to support, the development of businesses in their own country. And it's from that America is now removing this de minimis, the sort of minimum has to be above $800 before we put on duties on it, that they are removing that. So any size parcel to America that has value now is going to be subject to import duties, which is designed to discourage people from buying stuff from overseas, which, probably for big companies that import in bulk and pay the duties properly is not going to have that much of an impact. They're already paying these duties. Although I suppose the other tariffs are going to impact on that, of course. But what's happening with this thing is that for people who have small, side hustles, for example, going into Akihabara or Ikebukuro or Nakano and getting, like, for example, special limited edition, anime stuff, which is all happening all the time in Japan. In fact, I was going through Ikebukuro today, and you could see lines of people out front of the shops, queuing up for whatever new, anime release and limited edition is going out this week. And there are people that have great side hustles, getting into these lines, buying the stuff and sending it out to buyers in other countries. And, for people whose business model is based on an assumption of the cost of that of the duties and the shipping for that stuff, this disrupts that. This means that those things are now going to be subject to business importations, so the taxes and duties and paperwork. And that means for a lot of people that operate small businesses on very thin margins, that's going to disrupt those. And it's directly, of course, anime vendors and fans feel pressure over this. But yeah, I think this is actually, it's hurting a lot of small businesses. And you might say that from an American perspective, even if some of these people are Americans living in Japan, doing these businesses, sending the stuff back home, fundamentally, America wants you to buy your anime limited edition stuff from America, from Americans. So you want your sort of Texas-made anime stuff instead of your Japanese stuff. That's it. I mean, I guess if people, people still, if there's a market to pay for it with an appropriate margin, if people want it that bad, they'll just accept paying more. Which again ultimately means one way or another, either Americans will give up on it because they're too poor to buy it, or they'll pay higher costs and effectively be paying the vendor to pay the higher sort of taxes on it, which is just going to mean stuff is going to be more expensive for Americans. And this is again a choice that any economy can make. In New Zealand, cars used to be super expensive because we made like one shitty car in New Zealand. And in order to maximize sales of that car and to protect the jobs of people making that car, New Zealand made it really expensive to import any other car. And so you had to spend $20,000 or something. I mean, back in whatever it was in those days, it was probably $30 or whatever it was. But, for inflation, it was a price that was inflated. And everybody got a shitty car and had no choice as a result. But it was this idea that it was better to protect workers. And lots of countries make this choice. And America's making this choice right now as well, that it would rather, people have expensive, crappy stuff than nice, cheap stuff from anywhere in the world. America's traditionally been very open economically. And this is going to disrupt a lot of businesses, including businesses in Japan that at small scale do stuff for people in America. But at the same time, America wants you to get your your stuff from Japan from America. So, yeah, it's going to shake things up. And I feel bad for people who have businesses that are, I think Softy Papa said that he's actually shutting down his business over this. I'm hoping he can regroup and recover it from it. But certainly if you're into those waifu pillows are going to go up in value anyway. They'll go up in value and price first, and hence value after if they become more highly valued as a result. So yeah, the tariff extensions and the fact that the lack of clarity over this. I saw a news story actually that apparently courts have ruled a whole bunch of these tariffs also invalid. Although at the same time, Japan is playing hardball with America right now, where they refuse to send their trade negotiator to America to go finalize the reciprocal tariffs with America and the new auto tariffs, because America is not perceived as moving fast enough on it. There's huge backlash in America from the automakers that the tariffs that they're imposing on Japanese car makers aren't enough to protect American car makers from consumers realizing how shit their cars are. So as a result, they're the government's kind of hesitating on the agreed auto tariff amount. And so Japan has demanded that Trump immediately sign an executive order declaring that the deal that they did is true. And I'm sure Trump, being very afraid of ultimatums from the Japanese government, will immediately do as he's told and write an executive order. Probably not. But Japan, believing that, is playing hardball by not sending the trade negotiator, who, remember, the first time he went to America and got invited to the White House, literally did nothing but smile and wear a MAGA hat and say, I'm your best friend and please give Japan a sweet deal. I mean, the whole thing was a bit of a circus. So yeah, this is going to hurt a lot of people, small businesses relating to Japan, and that is a shame because you don't want to hurt the little people. But there again, this rule's been there for a long time, and I think it's also reasonable to want to at least not make it too easy for Chinese mega businesses to put small businesses in America out of business, for being unable to compete. But it means everyone's got to pay more. It's like New Zealand having shitty, expensive cars. It's kind of what America is. That's the deal that America's voted for. Anyway, crazy heat. 42.5 in Nagoya today is crazy. Talked about the heat at the start. The heat is hot. It's very atsui desu ne. What else we got in the comments here, by the way? them talking about MAGA hats. Steve Bartlett, it's the Diary of a CEO guy, is marketing and loves to sell his achievements. The company is successful after he sold it. Okay, yeah. I mean, I do respect what, I mean, see, I watch it. Sometimes I even hate watch it. Even when I think it's crap, I sometimes watch it. So he's doing something right. I have to respect Diary of a CEO, but yeah. Believe in yourself ranks high on the coolness factor. It's a technical shirt. This is a proper sort of marathon running shirt. Although I can't run in this, I am running in the in air conditioned gyms at the moment. But thank you. I appreciate. I really like the designs. By the way, I did start creatine this week. So again, if I'm looking forward to this being a roid rage related weekly vlog in a couple of weeks. Yeah, Timu and Cheyenne milked de minimis to the max with absolute crap. Well, that's how it looks anyway. And I don't know that anyone is going to get. I mean, I've never bought anything from either of those sites, so I suppose I can't. But there are probably people who will get too upset. So we'll see anyway. And yes, indeed, as Black Tango said, it did affect Softy Papa's business, and geez, that. I'm hoping he can recover again. I think it's just going to reset. It just means that stuff from outside of America for Americans is going to become more expensive, and they'll just have to reset, prices and expectations. And then you go into business again, and but it means that he'll be charging more and making less money at the same time. It sucks, but that is what it is. Camry. The Camry is made in America. And by the way, the Camry is a great car. When I was in America, I drove a few Teslas for fun, and they were great. They were lots of really fun. But I noticed you couldn't have a conversation with the person inside the car beside you because the cars are so noisy, not from engine noise because they're electric, but because they vibrate in the wind and everything. They're just so noisy. And I got into a Camry when I drove from LA to San Diego in a Camry, and it was one of the best cars I drove when I was in America. It was a total cheap base, go drive a car anywhere type of a car. And it was fast. It had great range. It was quiet. Camrys are fantastic. So America can make good cars when Japanese are telling them how to make them. This story, I don't know that I've ever mentioned the story before. I don't cover criminal news very often, but this did get a lot of attention this week. Very unusual that the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department, which ironically is the national, they should be called the National Police Agency or something. They're like the FBI of Japan. Not just for Tokyo. But yeah, there was this investigation. It sort of made news that there was this, I think it was like a electrical engine parts manufacturing company. And in fact, where was it? Oh, no, this is different. This is a police officer who somehow went to Twitter and bought a fake driver's license from teenagers and used it to somehow set up a bank account to take out, short-term high-interest loans to cover his gambling debts. So yeah, sometimes it turns out the criminal, I mean, again, when crime news, it is funny. It's nice to live in a country where criminal news, the most serious criminal thing that's happening is that a police officer had a fake ID to take out like short-term high-interest loans to use loan sharks, right? Because he had gambling debts. So yeah, no, that's not the story. There's a story coming up that I wanted to talk about the miscarriage of justice thing. Oh, this is an interesting one as well. Credit to ChatGPT for pulling these ones out and just sending me straight to them. So they're changing immigration. So Japan is looking more at immigration rules and thinking about having a coherent policy. But in terms of the specifics of this, where they're looking at changing visa criteria, they are tightening visa requirements for business managers. I'm like, what does that mean? Apparently that if you have a company with 5 million yen capital, now what does that mean? I'll come back to that because I deal with this at work. Then apparently just so long as that company with 5 million yen declared capital is basically it's a shihonkin. It's an amount that you declare on your corporate registration that is money that you've set aside in the bank that you will never touch. So it's like a safety fund, a rainy day fund inside the company. So basically 5 million yen, that's like at the moment in US dollars, it's like less than $40,000. So if you just set up a company and you make sure that you have $40,000 stashed away, which you promise not to touch in the name of the company as sort of like security, collateral for that company to be able to exist. and you have 2 employees in that company, then you can sponsor yourself a business visa. And there's a lot of people, you talk about people setting up, getting a business visa for themselves as a business manager to work in Japan. A lot of people apparently use this model to set up. They set up a small company in Japan, and then they're able to provide themselves with a visa. Apparently, there have been cases of visa fraud investigations where they've found that such companies were set up, but they were paper companies and they didn't really have operations or employees, which violates the spirit of the visa. And so they've decided to fix this problem of visa fraud by making the amount of mandatory savings 30 million yen instead of 5 million yen. So I guess doing a rough calculation, 30 million yen is, if 5 million yen is like 100 yen to the dollar, that's like, it goes from $50,000 to $300,000. Based on current exchange rates, I guess it's actually going from something like $35,000 to $250,000, which I don't know that that's going to, well, I suppose if you've got, if it only costs if you only need $35,000 cash, you can sort of set up a fake company to give yourself a free visa for Japan. It's a backdoor free investor visa for Japan, I suppose. So, okay, it means that instead of, every Joe Blow who knows this would be able to do this. Now you have to sort of be not quite a Russian millionaire, but you have to have a bit more money to be able to invest in proving that you've got I don't know that raising the amount of this shihonkin thing, the paid-in capital, it's a Japanese corporate law concept that has been used to equate the size of a company and so on, how trustworthy they are by how much cash they have in the bank, which is why Japanese companies are so cash rich. But I don't understand how shifting this really weird concept changes the risk of immigration fraud or anything like that. It's just kind of random, and it's just part of a narrative that the government's getting cracking down on visa fraud. I don't really know how many illegal immigrants there are that have gotten in on business manager visas, frankly, through this thing. But yeah, Quentin Rankin, thank you. It's about 200K. I think it's probably yeah, you're right. It's closer to 200K than 250K, but it's up from whatever it was, like 35K. It's actually good to know if you want to ever come to Japan and set up a business or just be in Japan on a business visa, this path is there. I'm sure there's probably got nightmarish paperwork to do, but it is a fairly simple criteria. But when they say that they're finding fraud, and I find it very hard to think that this is, in fact, I think they actually say here, it is aimed at preventing misuse of the visa for immigration purposes. And they think they're worried about the possibility of it rather than that there's a lot of data to sort of back it up. Some had raised concerns that the lax requirements may lead to misuse of the system. So it's just based on speculation that, we made it so cheap. This is such an easy way to get a visa to Japan. You just need 35 grand in the bank and promise not to touch it. And anyone can live in Japan. We must close this loophole. There's no proof that there's been any problem with it. It's literally just a token gesture to make it look like they're cracking down on immigration, which I think might very well be tied to Sanseito doing well. And just the LDP has set up this committee to look at how they can get tough on immigration so they can look like they're doing things to get tough. I don't know that Japan's biggest problem right now is the business manager visa. But anyway, they're toughing it up. We got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to talk. This is the miscarriage of justice story that I was going to talk about. This is a crazy story. And I don't talk about this very often, but apparently the company, I'm trying to remember what type of company it was. I think it was an engineering company of some sort that was involved in building, I think, electric motors and so on and sending them to other countries. And somehow somebody accused, somewhere in the Metropolitan Police Department, started an investigation into the company saying that they were exporting illegal equipment. They were violating the export control law in Japan. And they investigated this for 3 years, and the company said, "No, we do everything by the book. Here's all our paperwork or whatever." Three people were detained during the investigation for 2.5 years while the investigation was happening. They were kept in detention. One of them, 77 years old, in fact, actually, this is the family, but one, 72 years old, was diagnosed with cancer while in detention. And when he asked the ability to go and get treatment for his cancer, free from police detention while they're investigating him for 2.5 years, the police denied the request for medical care. And when you're in police detention, you are under the care, your food, your sleep, everything is under the control of the police, including medical care. They denied his request for cancer treatment, and he died of cancer while in detention, at the end of which they found that there were, did it go to trial? There was basically found that there was no case. The whole thing was a misunderstanding by the police. But they kept these people locked up and hidden away and abused and denied medical attention for 3 years. And the 2 survivors, they got an apology, which is extremely rare, from the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. The families did. One of the families said that we accept the apology, but we can't forgive you, but we'll take the apology. The other surviving family person said we refuse it until you explain how the hell did this happen. And this is where I'm not a supporter of Carlos Ghosn. Greg Kelly stayed in Japan and actually won 7 of the 8 sort of trumped up charges against him. Ghosn, I think, actually did some bad stuff, and the fact that he ran away to me validates that. But there is some truth. I mean, you can't feel sorry for a person who hired the A-team and ran away in a cello box to live in a luxury mansion in Lebanon, paid for by Nissan. But there is truth to the fact that the justice system in Japan, I've always said, you don't want to mess with the police in Japan, because they can, people confess to murders under less pressure than these people were put under, where they maintain their innocence, and they were innocent, including dying, in custody. So really rare that they admitted it, and they got a lot of TV coverage and so on, but there we go. Japanese are now considering caps on immigration in cases where people think there's too much friction caused by immigration. Not being clear what that means, but apparently this is where the government is acknowledging, pardon me, that on current trends, foreigners will be 10% of the population by 2070. We're up on time, so I'm going to go very fast. Yes, Japan playing hardball by not going to Trump unless he passes the executive order that they want. Sunny did an awesome job with the mesh this week, as did I, which is why I get to wear the crown again. It has terrible side effects. But thank you for the crown back, Sunny. Yes, I'd like to file a complaint about the terrible weather that Tokyo's been having. Oh, the no punch shabu shabu. Oh my God. I've talked about this before, but it's been a while. Unseen Japan decided to do a feature on the no pants cafes that were a big thing in Japan in the 1980s. And the story, which I did put into Blue Sky, which you can go and see, of how these cafes where the waitresses would not wear underwear and the floors would have mirrors. Oh, God. They caused a collapse of the financial system in Japan, because the banking inspectors that would check for the bad loans, that would do the spot inspections at all of the big banks in Japan for the bad loans, they would tip off the banks when they were going to come and do the inspections, so that the banks could prepare and hide the bad loans on their books to allow them to continue existing and allow the problem to snowball and get worse. And apparently they would tip off the banks when the surprise inspections were coming, if the banks would take them to a specific no pants shabu shabu restaurant in Kabukicho. And so basically these guys would get wined and dined at these specific no pants cafes in Kabukicho, and in exchange for that, they allowed these banks to continue hiding their bad debts. And when it came out that these guys were getting bribed and they got caught, and all of a sudden, okay, now everybody's bad loans show us now. And it turned out when that happened, all of these banks' bad loans had snowballed to such an extent that all these banks collapsed, and they were forced by the government to merge into the current mega banks that you have. Mitsubishi UFJ, Mizuho, Sumitomo SMBC, and Resona. They are all a result of the multi-bank collapse that happened after the bad loans were discovered, when they could no longer be hidden because they could no longer use no pants shabu shabu to bribe the inspectors to hide the debts. So basically, these, as ridiculous as the idea of no pants cafes are, they literally collapsed. They literally ended the bubble and collapsed the financial system in Japan in the 1990s, which is, to me, just one of the most awesome political stories of any country ever in the history of the world. And I can't believe it hasn't been made into a movie. And I think that's all that we've got for stories. So I will be... that'll do it. I'm going to go and set up the after party. Remember, in the after party, I will be picking I may pick a track from the after party. Who would ever admit that they went to, apparently, well, if you come to Japan, I mean, seriously, when I first came to Japan, Japanese dudes are like, hey, have you been to this place where they do this and this and this? I should take you. It's a wonderful place, and we can talk about baseball there. Different culture. What can I say? And the 80s in particular were a very different time. Everything was better back then, says Yoni. Yes, indeed. Anyway, I'm going to go do the after party. Remember, make suggestions. There is the link. One of them might make it into the next mashup competition. Thank you for keeping me company as always every week. I found that I was very impressed with the sped up AI preparation. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you always for keeping me company. Remember to like the video, because Literally, I just need it for psychological safety. I appreciate it. I'll go see you over in the after party in a couple of minutes. I'm going to sit up now, and have a great week, everybody. Remember, you can follow me on Blue Sky and on Instagram and all the other things if you want to see the other things going on in my life. And I will see you this time next week, as always. So boom, have a good one, and I'll see you on the after party in just a few minutes. Thanks for keeping me company.